So we organized this, what we call the Growth Showcase. This has always been kind of an acknowledgement by GELF that we've been doing this for 10 years. June, you've been at a bunch of our events, especially out west. Your first New York event, right? And it seems like year after year, there's 50 to 60% of the people that come to GELF that are still relatively new to international. Given with the theme of today, which is really this idea that, yes, we still believe that e-commerce is kind of the tip of the spear when it comes to international expansion, yet as we talk to the global e-commerce leaders in our community, as we talk to the experts, as we talk to the solution providers, we also hear that it's really important to grow the overall brand revenue. And often that means going through different channels. So we're kind of picking up on a couple of the sessions that I sat in on earlier today, both the opening executive leaders keynote panel, as well as the marketing showcase, weaving some of those kind of themes through this whole newer to e-commerce, what's it take to get going? So with that having been said, I am going to ask my three panelists to introduce themselves. And I think what we're going to do is start with June, who again is visiting us from LA. She was kind enough to join us in LA back in February. So she got a little bit of the flavor of what we've been talking about. And she'll take back some of the flavor from New York when we're in LA in mid-February. June, why don't you say hello, and then I'll ask Angela to introduce herself, and then we'll finish with Ari. Ari is new to the stage, so we've been fortunate to have a bunch of new speakers today. But June, why don't you update us on where you are now?
Yeah, hi, I'm June. I'm the CEO at Woven. We make apparel, athleisure, etc., and upcoming hard goods this winter. Prior, I was at Bala, known for the bangles, and before that, I was at Manduka, which is a yoga brand for a very long time, 13 years, I think. So, yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Angela?
Hi, everyone. I'm Angela Gruszka. I'm SVP of Digital Marketing and E-commerce at AERIN. AERIN is a luxury lifestyle brand led by Erin Lauder, who is the granddaughter of Estee Lauder. Prior to AERIN, I was at Maria Tash, leading e-commerce and digital marketing. Prior to that, I was at Millie, as well as ABC Carpet at Home and Anne Klein. We have not begun our international journey yet. However, from a wholesale perspective, we are distributed globally, as well as through our AERIN Beauty division, which is run by Estee Lauder.
So earlier today, when Heather was on stage, we were introduced to AF influencers. Now we're going to learn about AF influencers. So Ari, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing at Overtime.
Well, happy to be here. My name is Ari and I work at Overtime. By raise of hands, has anybody heard of Overtime before? Okay, so a few people. So,
at least half the crowd.
Yeah, so Overtime creates new disruptive sports leagues and IP aimed globally at the next generation of sports fans and athletes. So that means that we own and operate a basketball league out of Atlanta, Overtime Elite, broadcasting on Amazon Prime. We have a Football 7 league, OT7. We have a boxing league, OTX. And we create original digital content that we release across social media accounts where we have 85 million followers and fans that we engage on a daily basis. And we have around 2 billion views per month. Part of our business, besides being media rights for our leagues, and branded sponsorships for our content, is apparel commerce and licensing opportunities, which is my area of the business.
And you've done a pretty good job of growing it. Still fairly early international.
Yes.
I'll let you say how much percent, even though I've got it written down here.
So for our D2C business, international is only about 5%, but I will say that that's all organic. We don't spend any marketing dollars directly outside of the US.
So interestingly enough, we haven't updated a study from several years ago, but what we tended to find, especially among the early stage or early to cross-border to international, is you do tend to see this 5 to 12% range. So, not surprising, and then, kind of the middle of the road is that kind of like 12 to 17%. But it's crazy. Sometimes we've had speaker, hey, we only started international a year ago and we're at 30% already. So, June, tell us a little bit about the kind of crazy growth that your company had kind of before you joined, and just give us a little bit of background on kind of the boom and and kind of where you're in now and, kind of taking it in a new direction.
Yeah, I think, most of you guys have experienced a COVID, but my team is here. And so, like most other e-com businesses, Woven also experienced the COVID boom. And so the brand was founded during the yoga growth period, 10 or so years ago, and experienced that big boom about 2 or so years ago. But unfortunately, with COVID ending, I think also came the decline, which, again, I'm sure a lot of you here have experienced, and ad costs rising. And so it's been a journey, like many, to find other avenues of growth, and also finding ways to cut costs as well.
Got it. Angela, we talked a little bit, and Angela joined us last year on this session. So just because you're on stage with new to e-commerce, new to international, doesn't mean that disqualifies you the next year, because you might still be new to it. So tell us a little bit about.
Next year we're not.
Yeah, you guys had kind of the crawl, walk, run that you've talked about, but yeah, tell us a little bit. And there've been some changes this year. So where are you guys at, and what's the next path forward?
So we've been, over the past year, focusing on building the foundation for growth in general. And when you think about international, you need to think about your order to cash workflow, your systems architecture, and so forth. Previously, unfortunately, it wasn't that conducive to working with a cross-border partner. We had some legacy systems in place. We had capture in a different platform. And now we've sort of unified everything and basically set ourselves up for success. But as we were sort of going through this process from a technology perspective, from a business perspective, we've been going through sort of the strategy of how we can leverage our other channels, our other areas of our business to start to create more a brand awareness globally. So we've been leveraging our wholesale distributors, which we are distributed internationally in Canada, in the EU, and in Australia as well, and working to grow our footprint in those markets so that when we are ready to expand internationally, we do have brand awareness there. What's really interesting about our business is that about 20 to 30% of our traffic is international. So, and it's continuing to grow. And like I said before, a lot of that has to do with our wholesale distribution, but then also our partnership with Estee Lauder and our beauty business.
Got it. So Ari, let's talk a little bit about social. Most of the time at GELF events, we have like an entire session dedicated to influencers. We tried to spread that out through several different sessions today, but obviously you guys are big with the content creation world. Obviously young athletes attract young audiences, and as we all know, that's largely a social audience. Walk us through a little bit of what you guys have been doing on the social front and what you see, or some of the differences you may or may not see as you guys start to kind of ramp up, especially in Europe.
Yeah, so Overtime was born as a social media content in which we would follow high school basketball students and post their dunks and viral clips into Instagram and create viral content and amass an amount of followers. We all know that sports are really global, and that type of content resonated globally. So from day one, our audience was really global. And when we pair that with commerce, we knew that our audience was global. So from the day one, we had no restrictions as to where to ship, but we, again, didn't invest heavily outside because we're not set up with that structure. We don't have fulfillment centers. We don't have customer service people that can answer questions in different languages, etc. Then we always pair our commerce strategy with what the company is doing. So from our foundation, we've always added new intellectual property and social media accounts, and we do have accounts targeted specifically at Europe that follow European sports, and that's how we've been growing that audience. And from the commerce side, what we do is we identify those basketball players or influencers in Europe, and we just seed them product from the US, and we let them do the work for us of brand awareness. We don't have any type of hard influencer relationship with a contract. We're just gifting product to elite players, and they wear it when they're in the tunnel or in the social media accounts, and that's how we grow very organically.
June, let's talk a little bit of kind of the first big topic. We've heard a lot today about, and actually even at some of the events, even back to last year and earlier this year in LA, that we've seen due in part to anywhere from the trade wars 3 years ago to the pandemic to the unrest that continues in the East. There's been some headwinds to international. Of course, one of them was just the, kind of the boom of D2C and then the overcorrection, if you will, back to retail. Walk us through a little bit about kind of when you came in and what are the 5 lessons that you've learned through this that you can share? Because, I mean, what we're really seeing, and I think it was really clear in the opening session when we talked about the importance of strategic alignment, especially as you're selling through these different channels. Well, in some cases, we're realigning now, which kind of sounds like the Woven story a little bit.
Yeah, I think, where this discussion stemmed from was we were previously talking about how there's a lot of similarities in different brands on what they can do to course correct the downward trend. And so, one of the things that we did as a company was to get rid of our own warehouse. If you are not, I would say 10 million. I would say if you're not at 10 million, probably doesn't warrant having your own warehouse based on the expenses that you'll be incurring. So that's one of the things we did was to get rid of the warehouse and move to a 3PL. We also looked at our headcount and said, hey, based on where we are this year, does it make sense to have X many people? And that's probably one of the most difficult things you'll have to do because obviously you love everyone on your team, or hopefully you do. So we had to do a dramatic reduction, which was really unfortunate, but I know a lot of companies are doing that now, and it is a pretty big cost driver for a lot of people. So that's definitely one. We did a pretty big paring down of SKU reduction. We really looked at our analytics on what's selling and really focus on best sellers and noticed that, hey, 50-60% of the sales are coming from like 3 prints, which is really interesting. And so we really pared down prints and reduced our assortment. I feel like I'm taking up a lot of time. Should I just pause here?
Free shipping was one.
Yeah.
I mean, and again, free shipping from an international perspective has always largely been driven by minimum order sizes. I mean, I think you'll see 150, 90, there's all sorts of testing go into that. But free shipping, even if it's domestic, is just, not, it's sometimes in the CFO's crosshairs these days.
Yeah, we definitely made changes around that. We increased our free shipping threshold so that not everybody who came to the site is getting free shipping. Also, it helps you increase your AOV. So we went up from 99 to 150. We cut free shipping to all non-US destinations, which I know is unfortunate, but when you look at where your bleeding is coming from, you just got to do that sometimes. So.
Yeah, and I mean, we heard Gordon open the afternoon with, sometimes you just have to make some smart operational moves, and sometimes it's not easy. I think the last thing that we talked about was just this, the ad spend piece that we talked a little bit about that earlier today with Heather and NJ and Colleen. Just this idea that the era of free money, which was arguably what helped, with the boom for the D2C, cheap money, run it through the performance marketing engine, out pops, new customers, and sometimes you can just keep acquiring customers. Those days are kind of over. I think we've heard that clear story throughout the day. Where are you guys at? I think I heard that you were maybe starting to ramp it back up again.
Yes. So when I joined, I was looking at our P&L pretty closely and saw that how much we were spending ads were not really justifiable based on our ROI. And I think most brands will probably attest to that as well. So we dramatically cut our spending and used whatever money we had towards other needs. And because of Q4 and holiday, we did start to ramp back up, but in a more reasonable and smart way versus, I think during COVID, the mindset was the more we spend, the more revenue. And it is a difficult thing to see your revenue drop as you cut ads, because it's a pretty dramatic decline if that's what you're really dependent upon. So it wasn't pleasant to see the revenue drop, but we're in a fortunate situation where we're not indebted to PEs or VCs who are looking at our numbers so closely, and so we were fortunate to be able to do that. But yes, we are slowly ramping back up for holidays.
So Angela, we talked a little bit about kind of optimizing the marketing mix earlier today. Heather, we talked a lot about some of the physical activations, and I know when we spoke on one of the prep calls, you were talking about kind of 2 points. One, that physical activation, that re-engaging directly, again, kind of a luxury customer, so some similarities to earlier topics. And then also kind of reaching your B2B partners, the designers, and again, huge influencers. Tell us a little bit about what you guys are seeing as far as optimizing the marketing mix, especially with an eye towards ramping up internationally.
I think there's a greater focus on top of funnel.
Yeah.
Which is sometimes difficult to quantify, but I think it's so critical, really getting your media mix right. So as we start to think more about international, we're thinking about strategic partnerships, growing our trade partnerships, growing our contract partnerships. So we were recently at a hotel show in Miami, which had international hotel partners, which is a really great way to get our products in the doors and create brand awareness globally, as well as designers. So, many of our customers, because they are luxury customers, have homes all over the world. And we all know the power of word of mouth. So it's very important to develop these very strong relationships with interior designers. And what we're seeing more and more now is that the designers are more active on social media. So their projects are more visible. So that's an area that we're really leaning into. And then collaboration. So we recently launched a partnership with Tanner Kroll last year as a part of our 10th anniversary, and that was really critical in expanding our brand awareness in the UK. And we did see that our search volume for AERIN in that market did go up during that time period. So I do think it's critical to sort of put your thinking cap on and think about some of those less common acquisition efforts. And again, the more that you do those, the more that you do over time, it makes it easier to, I think, move into these markets.
So Ari, we talked a little bit about, one of your channels, well, we'll come to the shipping side of things, but you talked a lot about just, really taking a long look at why some of the conversion, you weren't hitting some of the conversion that you thought you might be hitting with social. We also talked a little bit about, how little difference you're seeing between some of the different social platforms. So, especially as you guys, again, look towards international, what are some of the thoughts there?
Yeah, so I will say that, when I joined the company over time, you're given this figure that we have 85 million followers and fans worldwide, and they really are engaged. So you would think, wow, if we can only sell a t-shirt or hoodie to 10% of our audience, we'd be making a great business. It turns out that having engagement and a really strong community online doesn't translate into them buying your apparel. So our challenge is first giving our fans the awareness that we not only have our sports leagues and these amazing engaging accounts, but we also have an apparel business. So with that audience, we have to convert. And then there's a large set of our audience that they don't make the purchasing decision in their home. It's rather their parents. So how do we let their parents know that we are their kids' top brand or top on the list for Christmas? So that's what we're trying to do and tackle, because whenever we run ads on social accounts, we're kind of speaking to the parents, but at the same time to our audience. So that's our biggest challenge right now, is converting the main asset that Overtime has, which is 85 million followers and fans.
I mean, it's funny you mentioned that. So my daughter just left for first year of college, and she actually spoke at Scott's Commerce Next conference last year, and she, they were doing a session where it's like, what are the young people? And, of course she embarrassed me because she was like, well, I don't have any money. All my money is in Amazon gift cards that I get from, my friend. And, of course, I never even thought about it. It's like, but so much of what they're just, it's Amazon gift cards. So I don't know if that means Amazon Pay gets opened up or something like that, but I mean, it's a very valid concern. I mean, your audience doesn't necessarily have a credit card, doesn't necessarily have the ability to pay.
Yeah, so for example, Shopify doesn't have like a great solution to accept payment via Cash App or Venmo, which are huge for the younger generation. So it's still a challenge, but from our point of view, we are seeing that a lot of this audience is going to convert in 3-5 years from now. So we're seeing that the long run is like even the generation that we're talking to now might be a little bit too young to buy on their own. They are still choosing us year over year because we focus a lot on retention. And soon enough, they're going to like make their own decisions and it's going to pay off.
All right. I want to come back, June, to some of the conversations that we've been having about, and this is something, I mean, you actually coined the DTC Plus just offhand, and she was like, I don't know, this DTC Plus phase that we're going into. So this, again, this whole idea of adding more channels, or more specifically, digitizing some of the traditional wholesale channels. Where do you see kind of, international wholesale, factoring into your growth picture now?
Yeah, so our current business is predominantly US, but we are seeing quite a bit of demand from UK, Canada, Australia, Germany, and some other countries where I think because of our sustainability push, where that really resonates in. And so looking at which countries where we're seeing demand and finding distributors or partners or retailers that may be good fits for us, that's definitely something that we're doing now. We actually recently signed on a Japanese distributor, and so the next step would be to kind of fine-tune our prints and sizing so that it would fit the Asian market. And we do have a pretty big opportunity that we also just closed that's coming up next summer. It's more of a brand partnership, but it would help our name to get out there. And let's say it's just a subscription box that is going to be delivered to quite a few doors. So I think, like I said, DTC Plus, finding ways outside of e-com where you can get your word out is, very, very key.
So, Angela, I'm going to come to you about the whole kind of cross-border versus the B2B site. But I do, if there are any questions, we've only got about 3 minutes left, and I've got to hustle over and get on stage next door to wrap things up. Any questions before we move on? Again, go for it. And you want to start?
Sure. I did a pretty extensive interviewing process. I think I reviewed proposals from 5 or 6 different ones. Obviously, fulfillment cost is definitely key. I have a friend who used to work at Amazon who was a really great resource for me. He also helped me look at the location of the 3PL and their branches, because the shipping cost out really varies depending on what state they're in. And so depending on your current shipping address mix, you want to look at, if you're predominantly West Coast, like, picking somewhere maybe Utah. But if you're predominantly East or mixed, somewhere like Kentucky, right? And so it was pretty surprising because I think a lot of brands are coastal, so like California or New York, but those are actually 2 states that are very expensive to do business in. So finding locations that make sense and looking at the costs, I think, are probably the 2 biggest pieces that I would consider.
Yeah, and we'll have the decks out. I'd recommend taking a look at Gordon's the InShift deck he was talking about in Europe. Obviously it's always kind of been in the Netherlands area and things like that. Ari, I know we had a little chat about some of the challenges that you face as new to international. It's a lot around shipping costs, international shipping. You want to tell us some of your pain that you've been through?
Yeah, some of these pains like you discover as you just allow people to shop online for your store. And for example, right now we use a printing label company called EasyShip, and pair it with our UPS account, which we do international. It turns out UPS only allows 20 characters per address line. And a lot of countries have like way longer addresses. So that's like an issue that if you don't have a customer experience or an operations person looking at every order getting fulfilled, those orders might be in backlog or just not shipped for any type of reason that you don't really know, or just be it different characters that UPS doesn't understand. As far as the cost, what we decided for international is that because we see those transactions are being purely organic, we're happy to offer a very economical shipping option for those customers and take it as part of the acquisition cost, just because we want to build a brand and get the most amount of customers possible and not just look at the profitability for each transaction. But I think a lot of these things are just discovered as you start going, and you might have like a customer reach one day saying, I had this story in Greece where it's like, my house is the blue house down the block from the street with the big tree. And that's how they do the street in that particular island in Greece. And there's no way to translate that into an American vendor. So you have to like really, once you open yourself to, I think, international or really any operation, you have to be really focused on your operations and making sure every customer gets their order.
All right, so now I'm going to put you on the spot, Angela, in like 1 minute. Boil down the cross-border versus the B2B decisions that you guys have been going through.
So for us, I think it's a bit of a challenge because when we think about international, from a wholesale perspective, so many of our distributors are all over the world. And it makes up a pretty significant part of our wholesale business. So when we think about, do we prioritize launching a B2B site versus international, it's almost a no-brainer to start with international because we want to be able to service those international customers. So that's something we've been going through, is just looking at like the ROI, right? So the investment into launching a B2B site without having international in place. So I think we're prioritizing international.
All right, and I want to develop that because I think that's something that a lot of people are, this whole, and that's kind of what we're getting ready to, I'm supposed to be talking 2 minutes ago on stage next door of the town hall, like, okay, how do we put these strategies into action? How do you prioritize B2B over cross-border? I want to encourage everybody to get up with me and our panelists after you clap and thank them and just walk into the room next door. So we'll be like this big force of people coming in. So thank you guys so much, and we're going to wrap up with the town hall next door.